Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down one of the worst weather patterns that we've seen so far in this summer that is going to bring a huge heat wave to a large chunk of the United States. This is also going to bring the return of more severe weather, including damaging winds, hail, and maybe even a few tornadoes as we go into next week across parts of the central and northern plains, the Midwest, and perhaps even the Ohio Valley. And in addition to this, we could see our next tropical storm form in the Atlantic Ocean as we go into early August. And if it does form, this could go towards Florida. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down everything that you need to know about the weather over the next 7 to 10 days. But we are going to begin with what's happening across the United States right now. And overall, the weather is pretty variant depending on where you are across the country. But the general gist is that most areas are quieter than usual. And we are also dealing with below average temperatures for a large majority of the United States. The Great Plains, Midwest, and Ohio Valley continue to stay relatively dry. No big weather makers really in those areas other than just, again, dry and cooler weather. Also in the Southeast, this has been an area that's been dealing with a more active and robust weather pattern with multiple rounds of showers and thunderstorms over the last few days, and this is expected to continue really all the way through the weekend as we will continue to have lots of moisture down there in the Southeast for the next several days. Back over in the Southwest and also back through the Rocky Mountains, there's been a lot of moisture here as well. Big thunderstorms back over in Arizona last night. We actually had some damaging wind events near Tucson, Arizona, which was pretty interesting. But overall, this is pretty typical for this time of the year. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Nothing in the tropics right now looks pretty ordinary, but this is all going to change as we go into the weekend and into next week, as we are going to be dealing with a completely different weather pattern. So let's talk more about this in detail with the jet stream to give you an idea of the weather pattern that's going to be happening across the United States. And these are the upper level winds. And as of now, we do have a low pressure system back over in southwest Canada. We also have one back over in northeast New England in the upper levels. And for the most part, these two low pressure systems really not bringing a whole lot. This one back up in Canada will bring the potential for severe weather for the next few days, predominantly for Canada, but we could see a couple of small severe weather events, maybe in like Minnesota, for example, where maybe an isolated tornado will be possible later today. In addition to this, we do have a ridge back over in the southwest United States, and this is going to be key for our weather pattern as we go into next week, because we could see this build into something that's called a death ridge, and we're going to talk more about this here in just a second. But as we go through the weekend and into early next week, we are eventually going to start to see this ridge move further to the east. And what this will actually mean is that we are eventually going to get a northwesterly flow back over in the northern plains, central plains, and the Midwest. And as this develops, as we go into late Sunday into Monday, we are eventually going to start to get some more mesoscale convective systems, which is something that we dealt with earlier in July, where we had multiple lines of showers and thunderstorms in the Midwest, and we are probably going to see more of that as we go into the later half of this weekend, and especially as we go through Monday and Wednesday of this upcoming week. Now, overall, this ridge is not just going to do that. It's not going to just bring severe weather, but it's also going to bring a much drier and warmer weather pattern to a large chunk of the Rocky Mountains, the southern plains, and as well as the west coast, where a heat wave will begin to build, and even temperatures back over in the central plains, Midwest, and northern plains will start to skyrocket more into the 90s for many areas, and even some 100s as we go into next week. So we are going to start to see a really large heat wave as we go into this upcoming week, and we will still see the potential for severe weather as mentioned before, probably from Monday until Wednesday. But a lot of these severe weather events are going to be really relied on mesoscale features, which means smaller scale features in nature, meaning that the predictability of these events will be lower. But I do expect multiple rounds of severe weather during the week this week, but I think Monday through Wednesday is the main time frame for now. We'll talk more about that though here in just a second. I want to touch more about the temperatures, because right now across most of the country we are still dealing with below average temperatures. Northwestern and as well as the East Coast all dealing with below average temperatures for the most part. Only a couple of banks right now of above average temperatures, and the main one being up in Canada, where there are a lot of wildfires right now. But as we go into Saturday into Sunday, that heat is going to start to build more and more as that ridge moves more to the east. Notice just east of the Rocky Mountains, that heat is really going to start to build as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week across a large chunk of the Midwest, northern and central plains, and also throughout the Rocky Mountains. And then once we go into next weekend, we are going to be dealing with almost all of the United States above average in terms of temperatures. So again, this death ridge is definitely going to start to ramp up those temperatures across the United States. Climate Prediction Center completely on board with this forecast when it comes to the temperature forecast. Anywhere from Wednesday of next week, which is July 31st, all the way until August 4th, there is a very high likelihood of above average temperatures, which many temperatures could be record breaking across the Great Plains next week. And the same thing goes back over New England. Things are going to start to crank up a bit, and it is going to be much warmer. And then once we go throughout the entire first week of August, we are going to be dealing with above average temperatures, especially back over in the northern plains and parts of the Rocky Mountains. We'll also be dealing with that. Now, I did want to point out the heat indices, which give you an idea of the feels like temperature, basically factors in humidity and as well as the actual temperature. This is what we're looking at for Tuesday afternoon across the country, and notice the bullseye of heat will be in the central plains, where many areas currently forecasted to reach feel like temperatures between 100 to as high as 115 degrees, anywhere from Missouri back into Kansas. We even could see some areas challenging maybe even 120 depending on how humid it gets. By Wednesday afternoon, same sort of story. It's actually going to expand more, and Midwest and back through the northern plains going to be dealing with some areas with feel like temperatures as high as the 100s, and even as we go into Thursday, many areas back over in the Mississippi Valley will be skyrocketing into the low 100s. So be prepared for that. It is definitely going to get warm. And I do want to mention that those feel like temperatures are usually about 5 to 15 degrees warmer than the actual temperatures, at least for those areas that were currently at least forecasted to be between 105 to 120 for feel like temperatures. Now, this is what we're looking at in terms of the supercell composite for the next several days. This will give you more of an idea of where we could expect severe weather. So for Saturday and as well as even Friday, I think overall the main concern for severe weather will be in Minnesota and as well as North Dakota. Now, as we go into Monday into Tuesday, I think that severe weather threat is going to shift across the Midwest and as well as back through the Central Plains. We really should have about 3 days of severe weather events, again, from Monday until Wednesday. So Monday, I think, will be mostly in the Midwest for Iowa and Illinois, and then back through areas like South Dakota, and as well as Nebraska. And then once we go into Tuesday, I think that'll start to ramp back up again across a narrow corridor from Minnesota back into maybe even northern Kansas. And then once we go into Wednesday, I think that main bulk of any severe weather will be back over in the Midwest. Now, how big will these severe weather events be? What will be the main threat of severe weather? Well, those remain pretty uncertain, but I do think overall, since we will be having a very strong ridge in place, which will more than likely be a death ridge or at least a strong high pressure system, that should be able to allow for most of these events basically to be more of lines of storms comparatively to discrete supercells. A lot of the time, especially this time of the year, we do get lines of storms comparatively to discrete supercells, which are more common during the spring, for example. So this is what the future radar looks like for the next few days, beginning with Saturday. Overall, the southeast will continue to stay active. Some isolated to scattered storms that could be severe will be possible in Minnesota on Saturday and Sunday. By the time we go into Sunday into Monday, we could get some line of storms going as early as Sunday night across South Dakota and as well as back through Minnesota. By Monday, some more severe weather events will be possible in the Midwest. Again, how severe these are and what exactly the main mode of severe weather is remain uncertain, but I do think the main concern will be damaging winds with any event that does happen next week, including Monday and probably as well as Tuesday, and eventually as we go into Wednesday, more lines and clusters of storms will be existent across the Midwest, the northern plains, and the central plains. Some of this could leak into the Ohio Valley by the later half of the week, maybe Friday or Saturday, but it remains very uncertain. And I do want to point out the European model is showing the potential for a tropical storm by the time we go into the very beginning of August, sometime around August 2nd or 3rd. Now, this right here is extremely uncertain. Only a few European model runs have shown this so far. There's not any, high certainty that this is going to happen, but there is at least a very low chance that we do see some sort of tropical system either enter the Gulf of Mexico or goes towards Florida for the first week of August. Will it be a hurricane? Again, we really don't know. I wouldn't be panicking about this since it's just so early on that we don't really have any good grasp of what will happen here, but there is a potential that we could see something tropical as we go into the very first week of August. So stay tuned to the channel. If something does develop out of this, we'll let you know. If nothing develops, we might not even mention it again. So just keep that in mind on the channel. Now, overall, for the next 6 to 10 days, the Climate Prediction Center does indicate that we will be dealing with above average precipitation really across the entire eastern seaboard, where there will be a lot of moisture and then drier than average conditions expected across the Great Plains. I would go ahead and say, though, I do think we're going to have an active weather pattern here in the Midwest, as long as we do have some of those mesoscale features that bring lines of thunderstorms. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.